The struggle is real. Having spent 40 years in the world of health, wellness, and performance, one question supersedes all the others. How can I improve my sleep? It's a struggle we all have, or almost all of us. If you don't, consider yourself lucky and pass this along to somebody else. But it can feel like the Holy Grail, the sword and the stone, the golden fleece, or even Thor's hammer. It is such a key to everything else we do in life. If you were to come across me on some street corner and we'd never met before, I knew nothing about you, and you said, how do I improve my life? How do I enhance what I'm doing in terms of health, wellness, and performance? My best guess would be to address sleep. What once may have been just an afterthought can turn into a constant struggle. Our bodies oftentimes can pull the rug out from under us, and that impact of a solid sleep, it affects everything. Everything. If you're listening to this based on the title of this specific episode, you're tired. So there's plenty of evidence. We've done multiple interviews with some of the top sleep researchers and physicians in the world, and we'll have some links to those in the information. But right now, you just want answers. So what I'm going to do with this episode is we're going to go through 20 specific strategies, and they're broken into 3 different categories. There's a low-hanging fruit. Those are the things that I hope you're already aware of, but maybe it's just a reminder to say, oh yeah, I'm not doing that. I need to get back to that. And then there's the deeper strategies, the next level type stuff. And those are things that good chance you haven't heard of, but they are backed by plenty of evidence, plenty of data. We'll go into those. And then the last section, it is just N of one. It is just some things that I've been working through in my own life. I have struggled with sleep for many years on and off. And so I've tried a number of different things. And so that last section is a handful of things that it's not backed by evidence. I don't have data for it except for my own. So I want you to treat that last section with kid gloves. Maybe it's worth trying. Maybe it's not for you, because it's simply it's a list of things that have been helpful to me. So those are our 3 categories we're going to go through as we try to address sleep. Now, if this is your first time joining us here on the Coaching Lab podcast, I'm your host, Dr. Brad Cooper of Catalyst Coaching. And I can't tell you how happy I am to have you join us. This is not a podcast that we do any advertising with. It is available. It's been available for 7+ years now. We are around 365 episodes. And if you are new, it might be worth going back through the library and kind of picking and choosing some different topics that might be of interest to you. Our focus is on enhancing our health, our well-being, and our performance for those peak performers that are listening, in the midst of all the baloney, just the noise. There are so many influencers going to the extreme. There are so many headlines trying to get you to click, and that's not us. We are trying to pull together the evidence, what works, what's been established, and, as I mentioned today, clarify when we are not doing that. So in the last section today, I'm going to be going through things that are not evidence-based, things that have helped me individually, but you need to treat them appropriately. So we're trying to highlight those and not act like Brad's solutions are the magical thing that no one's ever discovered before. Now, on the coaching front, if you're looking to earn your MBHWC approved coach certification, our Catalyst Coaching Institute, as many of you know, was named the nation's #1 program by Fortune magazine. And Forbes magazine said we're the most customizable. So some nice feedback. We did not expect that. It came out of the blue, but we were certainly happy to see it. We do have a training coming up. You can register for that now on the website, catalystcoachinginstitute.com, or please, it's a big decision, whether you're a clinician thinking about adding it to your toolbox, or if you're saying, you know what, I'm looking for a new career, or I'm looking for a retirement plan, or something I can step into 5 to 10 hours a week and keep doing things that I love while making a little money on the side, or somewhere in between. Reach out to us, results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Susanna or myself or one of our core mentor coaches will reach out to you, and we can set up a time to talk through any questions you might have. Let's jump back into the sleep piece. Let's start with this category of the low-hanging fruit. The things that you may have heard of, hopefully you have, but let's run through them just so you can do an honest recheck. Because I hear that a lot where people are like, yeah, I do all those things. Do you? Do you really? Like if I followed you around, and I'm not going to, don't worry, no stalking going on here. Would that be the case, or would it occasionally be the case? Or is it your plan, but it doesn't actually happen? So let's go through the low-hanging fruit first. Those things that you're probably aware of, but maybe not consistent with. And let's prioritize these first. Let's put these at the top of the list. Let's make certain that these core elements are being done almost without exception. So the first one is eliminate caffeine after 12 noon, or maybe earlier. I've been trying to draw mine back closer to about 10. Now, the obvious with this is your traditional coffees and teas. But a lot of folks forget about sodas, chocolate, green tea, cocktails, even some ice creams. So check the ingredients and don't give too much credit to the, in quotes, decaf coffee or decaf tea. That just means less caffeine, not zero caffeine. In fact, decaf coffee can have up to 50% that of standard coffee. So look for non-caffeinated. That's a completely different word than decaf means less. Non means none, zero. We don't have it. So that's what you're looking for. If you're going to go with teas, especially in the evening, late afternoon, look for that no caffeine, non-caffeinated type labeling and not simply decaf. Now, caffeine habits, they're tough. And I'll tell you, if I had one of you listening for every time someone had said, oh, caffeine doesn't influence my sleep, well, Huberman would be in trouble. Now, even knowing that a Diet Coke or a cup of coffee doesn't affect our ability to fall asleep. So I'll buy on that. The data backs you up. It doesn't affect your ability to fall asleep in most cases, but the depth, the quality of our sleep is reduced. So we fall asleep, we trick ourselves. We have that Diet Coke at dinner time or, watching TV or a game or something, and we fall asleep. And we're like, okay, so I'm not affected by it. Let's break that down. Your falling asleep is not affected by it, but the depth of our sleep, the quality of our sleep, and thus the need for more caffeine the next day is impacted. So enjoy your coffee, your tea, etc. The data does not appear to point to a reason to eliminate this entirely. Some studies even showed benefits. Let's just make certain that we enjoy them while there's an AM still on the clock. So that's the first one. Second one, turn out all the lights. Any form of light in your bedroom, your phone, your adjoining bathroom television, street lights, other sources. They clearly affect quality and quantity of sleep. Now, this basic, along with the caffeine strategy, is the lowest of the low-hanging fruit fix. If you can't pick up all the sources of light, if you can't block them all out, and we often can't. We have very thin blinds in our room. So if it's a bright moon or there's some sort of light, there's snow outside that's reflecting that, etc., our room can be bright. So pick up an inexpensive set of blackout eye covers. That is, again, low-hanging fruit. That's an easy one. Grab those, take those with you when you travel, and use them at home if you need to. Third one, sounds of silence. Traffic, snoring partners, phone alerts, television, other noises. All of these can have a significant impact on our sleep. Now, a couple of these are obvious. The solution to the phone and TV are simple. Others, maybe not so simple, but worth the creative effort to at least influence. Now, I have tried every sort of earplug, and there are some pretty good ones out there. So I don't have a brand for you. We don't have any connections with folks, but try a few out. Don't give up after one. And what I've found is if you combine the earplug with a sound machine, that can be helpful. Oftentimes, a sound machine by itself, it's not right there. It's on your bedside table or it's across the room or something. So it can block the outside sound, but it can affect, it doesn't impact the closer stuff. So combining the earplug with a sound machine can be helpful. Now, if your partner is a frequent snorer, please note, this can be a sign of a very serious health issue, including sleep apnea. So encourage them to take a deeper dive. Now, once that's done, or as that's being done, the combination of the earplug and the sound machine might help muffle that a little bit. Another product, and again, no connection here, I'm just going to throw it out, that I love it. And again, we need a marketing connection with them because I've told so many people about them, but we don't have one, and they're called Sleep Buds, and they've changed. Bose used to make them. There's another company called Oslo that sells them now. I guess it's some former employees of Sleep Buds that bought the company out when they were having some difficulties. So in any case, this brand Sleep Buds, and I think there's a lot of different companies that do something similar. It's essentially a sound machine in your ear. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but kind of make a quick note of that. And then the last one under the low-hanging fruit is be cool. And everybody's unique, but a cool room temperature has been shown in study after study after study to enhance sleep. Now, what that means for you is going to vary. What that's going to mean for you based on where you live, what the cost of electricity is, and the availability of air conditioning, that kind of stuff. But try it out. Our general strategy is during the winter, when it doesn't cost us anything, we drop it down to about 64 degrees. In the summer, when we're having to pay to cool it off, we're around 67, 68. So in any case, find out what works for you, but know that can have an impact. Now, the next section is the next level strategies. This is maybe stuff that you maybe kind of heard, or maybe you heard one of our prior guests talk about it, but super helpful and evidence-based. So we're staying with the data in this section. They're just not quite as well known as the low-hanging fruit that we just talked about. So number one is consistency. Pick and stick. Dial in your sleep window and hold it steady. If 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. works for you, great. The data on circadian rhythms is clear that maintaining a similar schedule 7 days a week, not just weekdays, 7 days a week, is incredibly valuable. Now, we're living life. We're not here to sleep. Sleep enhances life. We're not sacrificing everything to get the right sleep. So, yes, make exceptions, special events, special activities, family get-togethers, concerts, football games, whatever it is for you that's valuable. But make sure they are exceptions. If these exceptions are occurring twice a week, you might want to look up the definition of exception. Second thing, the phone. I mentioned this earlier. In fact, this is the third time I think I've mentioned the phone. And frankly, since scrolling is often the culprit to the lack of consistency with your sleep schedule, it maybe applies to all of them. But bottom line, folks, get it out of the room. You need an alarm clock? Okay, go get an alarm clock. They're $10. And then, by the way, when you get the alarm clock or when you're traveling, place a towel over the alarm clock. You'll still hear it, but you won't have that light that we just talked about has a big impact on your sleep. Third thing, alcohol. Everybody's got an opinion about alcohol, but when it comes to sleep, the data demonstrates our sleep is negatively affected. We just know it. So if you enjoy an occasional drink, there can be a time and a place. It's just not all the time, and it's not every place. I've noticed a difference with my own sleep on this front. That doesn't mean I always avoid a drink. I simply ask myself, is this drink tonight worth a drop-off in energy, clarity, focus tomorrow? Sometimes when our family gets together for a nice meal, when Suzanne and I are out on a special date, sometimes the answer is yes. Other times, frankly, usually, it's no. Because I love being focused and energetic and ready to rock and roll. So, but that's you. You decide what it is. Just know what you're deciding. Don't go into it blindly. Don't be like, yeah, no impact. No, there's an impact. It might be worthwhile, but do it purposefully versus, I don't know why I'm not sleeping well. You kind of do. Third one, shower or bath. Actually, this is the fourth one. Shower or bath before bed. Now, the old theory on this, which is still partially accurate, is that the relaxation inherent in that shower or that bath it just kind of sets the stage for a good night's sleep. Now, that is partially true, but more recent findings have demonstrated the real value occurs when we step out of the shower, step out of the bath. The warm water expands our blood vessels. This is called vasodilation. And then the cooler air in the room reduces our body temperature slightly. Then, as we slip under the covers, that rewarming process helps us nod off a little more quickly. Next one, screen time and evening light. I talked about this briefly with the television, and most likely the headlines have brought this to your attention already, but maybe exaggerated it too much. The bottom line here is to address the low-hanging fruit that we talked about earlier, and then commit to only 2 activities in bed: sleep and sex. No TV, no scrolling. If we can take those out of the bed, you'll be way ahead of the game in terms of your sleep. Next up, we've got morning light. Our circadian rhythm is set by our inclusion of morning sunlight. Whenever it's possible, spend a few minutes outside first thing in the morning, right as that sun's coming up, even on cloudy days. This one almost made it into the low-hanging fruit category because it is so important. Next up, we've got exercise. Daily movement and exercise enhances all areas of our lives. You hear me talk about this all the time. You hear our guests address this all the time. And that includes sleep. Data varies by individual regarding PM exercise, doing stuff at night, but most recent studies appear to debunk the notion that for most people, if you're not accompanying it with caffeine, evening exercise has more upside than down, and that includes the impact on our sleep. Large meals before bed. There are a lot of reasons to avoid evening snacking and large meals before bedtime, but a negative influence on sleep is one that you might want to keep in mind if this is something that has worked its way into your life. Cognitive behavioral therapy. We've had a multitude of sleep physicians, researchers join us on the Coaching Lab podcast, but one of my favorites was Dr. Jade Wu. She wrote a book titled Hello Sleep, and it really focuses on this CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and how we can use it for our sleep. And it doesn't require seeing a counselor. So really valuable book. We'll have a link to that conversation. And she also mentions a free app that I've used many times. When my sleep gets off the rail, I pull that back up. I walk through that for 30 days, and it tends to get me back on track. And then the last of this second level group of strategies is melatonin. You've heard of it. There are so many misconceptions about melatonin. And what happens is, as a result, it's become an overutilized and thus ineffective strategy. We had Dr. Meeta Singh. She's a sleep doc for the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, Major League Baseball, and several colleges. And she really opened my eyes about the key details around this idea of melatonin. She emphasized something I think you already know, but it's not a sleeping pill. It doesn't put you to sleep. It subtly helps maintain your levels of, melatonin, allowing your sleep to continue. And as we age, that can drop off. So that's one of the things that affects sleep as we're aging. She also clarified the dosage, and this was fascinating to me. If you go into your grocery store, almost always they have a 5 to 10 milligram dosage that's available or more. But she said that's not what you want. You want very small, just a little bit, 1 to 2 milligrams. Now, just like with the Sleep Buds, I don't have any connection with the company. I'll just tell you, we use something called Nature Made as a brand, and it does offer those smaller doses online. So you may want to check that out. And I'm going to come back to melatonin in my N of one thing that you might want to try. And again, it is not data-driven except for me personally, but it might be worth looking at. And that brings us to that section, some things that I've been trying that are not based on evidence. They are based on me saying, yeah, I think I'll try this. Oh, that worked. That helps, I think. So there could be a placebo effect here too. So take these with a grain of salt. Take these with oh, interesting, but don't take them as oh, Brad said this works. I'm just saying it's worked for me. And I thought I'd throw it out there and maybe it'll help you a little bit as well. So here are a few unique approaches that I've found helpful for my own sleep and my sleep schedule. First one, let's go back to melatonin. My use of melatonin would absolutely qualify as non-traditional. I do utilize the 1 gram dose that Dr. Singh suggested. I do not take it before bed. Instead, I'll turn 60 next year. Every single night involves awakening to use the bathroom. I know, TMI. That's what you get here. So on my way to the bathroom, that's when I ingest 1 gram or milligram of melatonin. That's on the theory that it will partially restore my early morning levels as I return to sleep. Does it work? I don't know. This is an N of 1. But I've been following this approach for the past year, and whether it's placebo or reality, it's something I do plan to continue. Next up, evening fluids. Oh, this is one. You might even nudge this into the data-driven section because in terms of waking every night, I'm fortunate. It's generally just once a night. Many, if not most of my peers talk about waking 2, 3, or more times every single night. Now, this can indicate a medical issue, so get checked if this is you. But it can also be the result of, well, drinking too much fluid. Like, come on, let's go back to the basics. Now, I start my day off with 20 ounces of water. So when I'm up at 5:30 or 6 a.m., it is very first thing before I even make Susanna's coffee, before I pull out a book, grab my journal. None of that happens until I grab my water bottle, fill her up to the top, down 20 ounces, and then the day begins. And I've been doing that for several years. So I'm very well hydrated from whenever I wake up until the late afternoon. But evening fluids, almost zero. A little bit with dinner, nothing after dinner. Now, it may seem obvious that reduced fluid intake decreases the likelihood of waking to go to the bathroom. But folks, from my observation, obvious isn't always reflected in our actions. So it's worth considering. Next up, step outside of time. Clocks and phones, I talked about that already. But I've taken this a step further, removing my access to knowing the time once I'm in bed. No clock, no watch, no phone. Now, you got to understand where this is coming from. My entire life, and I've spoken about this before, I've felt like a clock has been ticking in my head. Doesn't matter if I'm running, doesn't matter if I'm working, doesn't matter if I'm sleeping. It's like I'm in a hurry to get whatever done. And with sleep, what would happen is as soon as I'd see the clock, I'd start doing calculations, figuring out lost time, how it's going to impact tomorrow. Should I stay in bed? Should I get up? Should I work on something? Now, I have no idea. I wake up, I use the bathroom. I don't check the clock. I don't consider how long it's taking me to go back to sleep. I've bypassed that brain trigger, and it has absolutely changed my sleep. Next up, something I briefly mentioned before, sleep buds and eye covers. I use eye covers always when I'm traveling, but probably just about every night from middle of the night forward. So when I get up for that melatonin, use the bathroom, grab the eye covers, grab the sleep buds, good to go. Now, again, I mentioned the sleep buds before. They're basically a sound machine built in an earplug. I am a side sleeper. They have zero influence. They're flat, so they fit into your ear. They fit flat, and they don't cover up safety things like fire alarms and that kind of thing. So they, for me, muffle the sounds of neighbors, cars, partners, miscellaneous sounds in the house. the dog moving around. And oh my goodness, in hotels, they are more important than a suitcase. They are not cheap. They cost $250 to $300. So they are a very expensive product. But when you think about using them every single night for, let's say they last 4 years, that's a pretty good route. Your alternative that you may want to try first, much less expensive, is combine the earplugs, a high-end set of earplugs, with a sound machine. And that's pretty close. But if that's not doing it for you, maybe worth trying out. Next up is the banana. Now, this is something more recently I've been doing. And you may want to talk to your physician about this, is there are inherent downsides in this because you're ingesting, bananas are high in sugar, you're ingesting that middle of the night. So you need to look at the whole picture here. But when my training volume is high, when I'm running a lot, I'm usually hungry when I wake up in the middle of the night. Now, I'm fine. And I'm not truly needing food at that time. I'm not lacking calories at that time. But we talked about my brain loves to spin in the middle of the night. And that was one more thing. I'd wake up, get melatonin, grab my sleep buds, eye covers, go to the bathroom and lay back down and then start thinking, I am a little hungry. Should I get up and get something? No, I'm okay. Actually, I am kind of hungry. I think we've got some yogurt, Greek yogurt in the fridge. Maybe. So, I mean, almost every night for like 2.5 years after we moved to our new house, I'd get up and end up walking to the kitchen in the dark, hoping there weren't any dog toys along the path, and having a little bite of banana or a few spoonfuls of Greek yogurt. And then, I mean, I don't know why it took me so long, but a few months ago, I eliminated the walk to the kitchen. I just keep half a banana by the sink. No more imaginary hunger pangs. No more walking to the kitchen. No more refrigerator light blasting my circadian rhythm. And with the banana, I get a little extra magnesium, which some of the data is showing can be helpful to sleep as well. Last of all, breathing. And this might be the most valuable, or maybe second to the sleep bud type of product, or the combined earplugs and sleep or sound machine. This is a strategy you can use to help induce sleep. Now, there are a lot of options, and you can search the internet for sleep breathing strategies. There's something called the 4-7-8 strategy, which is where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold it for 7 seconds, exhale it for 8. I like to keep it simple. I've tried that one. I like to keep it simpler. So I'll use some version of box breathing, which is generally 4 seconds inhale, 4-second hold, 4-second exhale, 4-second hold. So you're just building that box. You're just going up, over, down, over, repeat. You can do it 3 seconds, you can do 5 seconds, whatever. Now, it's not a panacea. It's not automatic. It doesn't put you off to sleep in no time. But what I've found is that doing this nudges other thoughts that fill my head, and I find myself drifting off. So when I'm struggling, when I'm laying there and I'm not falling right to sleep, I'll go to this box 4-4-4-4. And not always, but more often than not, probably, that counting to 4 pushes out the thoughts about that work thing, pushes out that thought about that meeting, that whatever it might be. So that gives us 20 specific strategies. And we've pulled that from, like I said, I read everything because sleep's been such a big deal in my life. So books, research studies, the interviews that we've had with physicians and scientists that we'll link to. But where to start? Let me give you 3 steps. Be brutally honest. Start with that low-hanging fruit. But don't let yourself off the hook. Don't say to yourself, I pretty much do that. Do you or do you not? Too often we jump over the essentials looking for the secrets. We hear some influencers say, oh yeah, if you do blah, blah, blah. And we're not doing the basics. So don't skip to even in this case, don't skip to my personal tips before you've addressed those first ones. Really dial in that low-hanging fruit especially. Then move through the list of strategies. Pick out one or two. Don't try to change everything, because that way you can see what's working, what's not. As you add something, if you add 5 things, you don't know what's helping you. Maybe 4 of those are a waste of time. So I'd encourage you, add one for 2, 3, 4 weeks, eliminate it, or add on another on top of it if it seemed to help a little bit. And then, if at all possible, track your progress over time as you implement each of these strategies. That way you can figure out what is working and what's not. There are situations, there are medical issues where these are not going to do it. So don't ignore the need to go see your physician and talk this stuff through on a deeper level. But these things will address the needs for 90 to 95% of the population. So hopefully that'll do it for you. Thanks again for tuning into the Coaching Lab podcast. This is the #1 podcast for health and wellness coaching, and that's all about you. Again, we don't do any advertising, so if you pass it on to friends, share it with coworkers, that kind of thing, that's what really makes a difference. Really appreciate it. As always, feel free to reach out to us with any questions about your current or future coaching career. Results at catalystcoachinginstitute.com, or you can tap into additional health, wellness, and performance coaching resources on the website, catalystcoachinginstitute.com. And if you're an employer and you're saying, this kind of stuff would be great for our employees, we have coaching that is available to employers, also through EAP programs. If you want to talk about that, reach out the same email, results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com, and we're happy to do some brainstorming with you. And now, it's time to be a catalyst. This is Dr. Brad Cooper of Catalyst Coaching. I will speak with you soon on another episode of the Coaching Lab podcast, or maybe over on the YouTube coaching channel.